Hey now, everybody. Welcome back. Brand new Take Aim podcast. And this week I'm with Tim Clark from Red Dog Outfitters. Tim's been with me over the years, and many times it's this time of year. Tim's been with me quite a bit during the rut, and excited to hear from him as always. But Tim spends so much time in the field that he really knows phases of the rut that the deer are in. This year is no exception. So we spend a lot of time talking about basically what's locked down, what they're doing, but all sorts of different phases of the rut. But you can find more about Tim on Instagram, Red Dog Outfitters, and online, Red Dog Outfitters. Tim runs one of the best deer camps around, and if you're ever looking for a hunt in the great state of Kansas or Nebraska, I highly suggest work with Tim. He's a great outfitter, and a guy that is just full of knowledge. So hope you guys enjoy the show. All right, guys, we're live, brand new Take Aim podcast, and excited to have this guy back with me from Red Dog Outfitters, Tim Clark, out in Kansas. What's happening, Tim?
Man, too much is going on out here to keep track of, really. We just got a phone call like 20 minutes ago that we got another buck down, and I sent Mike and Jordan over to get it, and that was pretty much it, getting out of lockdown and trying to get some deer on the ground before these guys are done with their hunt.
Yeah, crazy. I know over the years, me and you always get together pretty much during hunting season, and it's always fun to get together during the rut to kind of give the, so-called rut report, because it does change in every state and every county and every square block. But I always like to get these stories to see what deer are doing from each state and where you're located, especially in Kansas, because it's one of the best, dang bow hunting states on the planet, and see what the deer are doing out there.
Yeah, exactly. We just, I think we're in lockdown right now, and I think we're tailing out of it. But we had 2 days go by from Saturday to last night. Wait, maybe it wasn't Saturday. I don't even know what day of the week it is, man. We've been hunting nonstop for like 20 days straight. But 2 nights, or Saturday night, it was 82 degrees, and then 2 days later in the morning it was 2 degrees plus wind chill, I think is what it was. It's horrible. And the deer completely in a state of shock, and it goes to 40-mile-an-hour winds, which out here is always windy, so the deer kind of get used to it. But when it gets to whipping like that after that extreme of a temp drop, with the full moon and lockdown, it's been difficult to say the least. And last night, waiting for the phone to ring, and we had 4 calls come in the last 10 minutes of the daylight. Like, thank God. People connected 4 times last night, and then once this morning. So we've dropped 12 deer in the past 72 hours now. So it's starting to feel like the rut again. And we don't have a ton of hunters out. It's not like we're running 100 people to get those 12 deer. That's about a third of our people that we have active. So yeah, things are looking good, man. I like to say, I know exactly where the rut is. I just don't. But I'm pretty sure we're in the tail end of lockdown, and things are starting to get back to normal, and things are starting to get exciting again.
Yeah, just to hit on what you said for a second, Tim, is a lot of people coordinate deer movement with weather, obviously, and some of that is an easy prediction, like if it gets hot, and we talk about that, really quite often, but we don't talk about that other swing where it kind of just, it gets super, super cold, super fast, basically overnight in so many hours. And like you just alluded to, man, I've really noticed it puts a huge hamper on deer movement. It's almost like it, which I'm sure it is, it's probably just a physical shock to their system, wouldn't you say?
I think so, yeah. And especially after they go through the October lull and they're all full of fat out here in the Midwest, these things just eat corn, as we all know, and that's where they disappear to in October. They put on all this weight, then it's hot, and they're like, not wanting to move, just like we would if we gained 60 pounds and put on a fur coat and it went to 82 degrees. And they start getting used to this new routine and moving just in twilight or even just at 3 a.m. and then it drops down to 2 degrees. Like, it's seriously like going from August to January in 2 days. And imagine being out camping. Obviously we're more susceptible and we're spoiled, so we're not ready for that kind of a swing as human beings. But I think the deer do. It does affect them. And what it really affects is us as hunters, is because everybody wants that cold snap. We all fascinated about it. Like, I can't wait for November and the cold snap. I can see the deer's breath. And then, boom, the cold snap's here and nobody wants to go hunt. People are calling to come out of their stands, and I get it. I don't even want to walk out to a stand, let alone sit in one in the wind for 2 or 3 hours, even though it is the rut. It should be peak. The deer they're not moving. And people aren't out there participating as much as, you would imagine they would be. And I'm not knocking anybody for it. Like I said, I wouldn't do it myself. But, yeah, it definitely squelches activity until they get used to it. And even if they're not used to it, I think at a certain point they just kind of have to deal with it, and they get up and they go.
You there, Tim, or did I lose you?
I'm still here.
It got quiet on me for just 2 or 3.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And the rut test is really fascinating, and I think there's a lot of phases to the rut. And like obviously we use the word lockdown, but I think even lockdown's like kind of fascinating because I don't know. To me, it means that the area you're in, multiple bucks kind of have does on lockdown. It's not usually just one buck. It seems to like kind of hit an area all at once, and then man, it gets really hot again in just a day or two. So for a lot of guys, you don't need to give up hope. It's just you got to wait out that 24 to 48 hours when he's kind of done what he wanted to do with that doe and it's over with.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's the last 2 seasons we've been talking, we've had lockdown pretty much on schedule at the 6th to the 10th, and this year I planned around that, and I know it's nature and we can't hit, but when you get 2 years in a row at the exact same dates, at least give or take hours, not days. There was the 6th to the 10th and 17 and 18 here, and then this year it drug on to the 12th, and we started camps on the 10th, but not planning for it to be over on the 10th. Like I say, I know it varies, but it drug out until yesterday evening, and it's frustrating, and people aren't seeing deer. They're not seeing the right deer. They're not even in the creek bottoms out here. I mean, they completely vacate, and it's like everything just vanishes off of our cameras. You don't get 2 a.m. shots. You don't get anything. They're just gone. And, they run off these creek bottoms, and they run up into a CRP draw, and they breathe. If they find another doe on their way back, guess what? You're not going to see that buck maybe ever again. And you kind of sit and, keep your fingers crossed. And it's going to come back around, and this is our 10th season. And I could have told you this was going to happen, and I know it was going to happen, and everybody else does. But I'll tell you what, man, people don't see deer for a day, and they get real nervous. And I understand, especially people who are here for the first time. But I think they're starting to snap out of that, and we're starting to see some does coming back on camera that look like they've been up to no good. The bucks aren't far behind, and that's the hardest thing right now is getting people to watch behind the does, because we as hunters like to watch the animals, not watch behind them. Is a habit, right? I mean, we get used to watching what's in front of us, not thinking there's anything else around. But lockdown, man, it's important to watch that last 100 yards trail and even 200 yards behind the deer, because how long will the buck follow a doe? There's no real study on that I'm aware of. But my guess is he'll follow that doe around until he finds another one or he gets shot. And people aren't generally looking for that.
Yeah, they're not. That is true. And I don't know of any data whatsoever that says that either about lockdown. I think some of that is, maybe I'm overthinking it, but some of it I think is older bucks, and they kind of know, some of these local girls in the neighborhood, so to speak, and they know what, you know what I mean? They know what kind of pressure that they could probably put on that doe. Like, do I want to be right on her butt and keep pushing her to where she runs away, or do I hang back 100, 200 yards, she knows I'm around, and when it's time, it's time? But I really do believe that's a thing.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And there's a lot of areas that we have that don't have any bucks all year round, and I think everybody listening can agree that they have that one spot that there's always does, and they always get a picture of a buck. May not be at the same time every year, but, sometimes these bucks come back. And you don't see them but that 1 week or those 5 days a year. And, they'll surprise you. Or sometimes when people call and they've got them dead before I even know they're back, that's always a pleasant surprise. But, the chasing point the chasing phase is a really good phase. And I think there's 2 sides to that coin. I think there's a chasing phase on the other side of the coin, obviously coming into the rut when they're chasing lockdown, and then there's obviously the chase when they lose their doe, and that doe either runs away and they're running like hell after her, or they something else catches wind and thinks that it's still on, and they start chasing. I think the best story I have probably ever on lockdown and coming out of it was up in Nebraska rifle season a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if I shared it with you on this or not, but we had a second morning of the rut. We had, I don't remember how many hunters were on the river, but I know the 5 of them wanted to move. And there happened to be the same number of guys who shot deer in the next half an hour. And I got there to kind of give like that midday kind of pep talk, like hang in there. It's, we're in the rut. Things are going to move, just a matter of when. And the time that I got there, they'd shot 5 deer off the river, and all these bucks were chasing one doe, and they just got everybody filled their tag, except for a couple people that were, happy where they were at. That's just the way. That's how fast it can change. It goes from 0 to 60 in like 0 time.
Yeah, it does happen quick. And probably for you, Tim, and guys that get to manage or own or hunt on a big lease that they see year to year, I mean, I hear this phrase all the time, and you I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, is, they hate almost the rut because they have these deer pattern, they know these deer, and then all of a sudden, a can of whoop ass breaks out, and you don't know where your deer ends up in the next county to the south of you somehow, So it's like one of those just bittersweet in kind of both ends of the sword, because you want it, you want to see that. It's so exciting and so much fun, and you're going to see activity, but man, you lose some of the track of some of the deer. Like you said, some of your farms you don't even get a picture of a buck on them, and or a certain piece of property, and then boom, all of a sudden it's there. So it's just so unique and so dynamic how it works.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are hunting one property and one buck, you probably learn that lesson one time. You better have a backup plan, because I can tell you, I don't know how many bucks I have right now that are wearing half a rack from the beloved rut that we talk about so much. I just found one the other day, right in the middle of lockdown. I'm going through SD cards like frantically, 4 a.m, getting up. I can't freaking sleep because I'm worried about deer. I mean, that's what I do, right? It's my job, but it drives me fucking crazy, man, and I don't really get any good rest till it's all over. But going through the pictures, and there's one buck named Crazy 8 who's got, like, I don't know, let's call him 12-inch broad tine, since he's only got half a side now. No one's going to shoot him. They're not 12, they're 11. He's a freaking monster, and then he's shaved off. Half of his rack is gone. He might as well be gone. But you know what? Next year that deer's going to come back, and maybe he'll have a funky side, maybe he won't, but maybe somebody will shoot him and get him recreated, but people don't generally do that. I think those bucks go into hiding for, if no other reason, they don't want to be messing with anything else, even a forkhorn with that half rack anymore. I'm sure people out there are going to disagree with that, because they can be pretty ornery, but we don't hear enough stories about those huge half racks, that they come in and got away. And same thing with like you said, they chase a doe off and they're gone. But the one thing I think people lose hope, if we lose a buck that we've been targeting here, and listeners everywhere can agree that they have the new buck comes and shows up. If you're hunting small woodlots and you've got does, something else is going to come in there. And losing a buck isn't necessarily the end of the world. We shoot them obviously all the time, and we lose those bucks that way. And then 2 days later, there's a new buck in town, and they can replace that spot pretty quick. You got to be a little lucky, and you got to have the right terrain. But typically, if you have those two things, you're going to get a refill.
Yeah, that is very true, and a lot of guys don't believe that, but somehow they seem to figure it out really fast that there's not a dominant buck in that area, and it's gone, and all of a sudden there's a new one, and he is Mr. Big Shot now, and it's his time. And again, just a unique dynamic piece of the rut that gets played out every year, and it's just a small little piece you kind of overlook, but it always happens. There's always another buck somewhere within the next 3 to 5 business days, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And it's true. They do come in, and if you don't have a buck replace that one that you lost, and you've got more problems than losing your buck. Honestly, if you have the habitat and the does, you're going to have that other buck unless you quit looking, and then people lose hope really quick. And I think a lot of times us as hunters, we make excuses as to why we fail, and we just give up, and I'm not speaking for anybody in particular, myself, and, oh, well, that one's gone. I'm going to just, watch college football or hang out with my kids and sleep in and go get breakfast instead. Go back out there and look, man, it's the rut. And if you got big deer on your property, I guarantee there's deer that are big that you're probably going to want to shoot a mile away, and a mile is nothing in the rut. I mean, how fast can a deer cover a mile chasing the doe? I mean, obviously it doesn't take long. Or somebody bumps them off another farm next door.
Few minutes at that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Taking their time, right? They can cover that no time flat. And plus, if you're in farm ground, you don't know what the hell's growing out there. I mean, you just don't. People think they do, and they don't. I tried to make believe for a while that I knew it was around, and then just you put out cameras and you hope for the best, and you hunt the ones you got, but there's always good surprises.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of that, Tim, has there been one this year that's really surprised you that you had no clue was around?
Kind of. We killed one the other night. I think it was Sunday night we killed this 8-point. I say we loosely. I wasn't there, but this 8-point come in. I don't know if you saw it on my Instagram, but God, he's freaking huge. He's not even an 8-point technically. He's a 7. He lost his brow tine, and he's 153 inches of 7-point. So freaking giant. And we killed one right before that actually scored the same night on a different farm that scored 157. And you put these two deer next to each other, and they don't. There's a picture of me holding them both together, and I haven't posted the one of the two guys I don't think yet. We just took those photos yesterday. Like I said, I don't remember. I'm super tired. I don't remember literally what day it is hardly. So, but side by side, these two deer look like almost different species. And I joked about one being a bison, but the 8 or the 7 point was just absolutely massive. I mean, everything you can imagine in a 7 points that equals 153 inches of antler. It's just insane.
That is insane. I did see the picture. It's awesome deer. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but is it like maybe it's like that on both sides, but I think you took a picture of like his beam on the left side, and it almost, like the beam and the threes almost blend together. There's just like such amount of mass there. That's pretty awesome deer.
He's definitely thick, and I know I don't have him on camera in velvet. And to answer your question at length, I didn't mean to ramble on and miss the question, but that deer, I'm pretty sure I have a picture of him in January, and he's really long, and he's not that wide in the picture, but I only got one photo of him. And I remember seeing, like, this might be my consolation prize from this drop tiny point that I had in there, who may still show up today. You never know, but he disappeared, and then this one came in January. I'm like, well, we know this thing's alive. Pretty sure it's the same deer, so I don't know. I'll have to go back and look, but I'm 99% sure you don't get that many 8 points that kind of characteristic, And
usually you would notice right off the bat that kind of mass and just and I don't know. There's something really unique about 8 pointers. When they're big, they're big, and usually that kind of stores a little memory bank in your mind,
Yep, exactly. And this thing coming the other night absolutely surprised us. We have another buck that came back. I don't want to say the name of him because some people might know his name from last year. And I've kind of learned to keep my mouth shut about big deer because they're like, I always say big deer and pretty women, man. Your own brother might screw you over for one. You know what I mean? Not to talk bad about my own brother because he's never done such a thing. But you know what I mean? People will go do crazy things for those things. And, big deer showing back up, we just kind of keep them under wraps till they're dead. But dude, that's always a nice surprise to see when you haven't seen a deer for 10 months that you still have dreams about and you still think about all the time, and then boom, they're back and they're better than ever. It's pretty cool. I think that's almost better than finding a stranger buck that you've never seen before in a way, because really nothing's better than seeing a deer come back that you already know. At least to me.
Yeah, but, I think I think it adds to the story is just the mystery. Like, where'd you go? Or have you been here the whole time? We didn't find you. Like, what have you been up to?
Where you been, man? It's true, though. Like, I've got cameras running out here 365 days a year, and you've been gone for 11 months, and then now you're back. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure I saw them this year in the spring, but, you know how easy it is to identify deer without their antlers on. They really kind of do all look the same. Yeah. This one had some characteristics, but it wasn't like a scar, and maybe it was and maybe it wasn't. But I'm not surprised he's back. I'm just glad. But if it wasn't for the deer that we've, the stranger deer that come in that we've never seen before, it wouldn't be a career that I'd probably want to stay in. I need that. As an outfitter, I need to have that cycle of deer showing up that I've never seen before and have that element of surprise to prove to people, hey, anything can happen out here. Here's why you buy a hunt. And these guys are semi-guided, and they kill frickin' monsters on deer that we've never seen before. And it happens all the time. People just got to put in the time and go out there and hunt. Even though both of those dudes the other night, that was their first sit, the lucky bastards. One sat for an hour and 45 minutes, and one sat till sunset, and they both killed deer over 150 at first sit. I mean, I'll take it. But, sometimes it works out that way.
Yeah, sometimes it does. I think it's happened to me one time in my life, shooting a nice buck on one set. And I don't care if it's 6 days or the first set. As long as it happens, I'm excited. And I've hunted enough hours now that I really respect the one set thing, that I still feel like I earned it because I've put enough work in over the summer with the trail cams and hanging stands and doing all that. Like, I appreciate both exactly the same, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And you have to, because sometimes it doesn't happen till the last hit. Sometimes it doesn't happen at all. So you take what you can get. They're there, and if it happens on the first hit, great. And a lot of people aren't going to pass a 135, 140-inch deer. Most people aren't, especially when they surprise you, especially in the rut, even on the first hit. Unless you've got 10 of them on the wall already, which I don't. 130-inch deer don't get a hall pass from me, man. I'm shooting, but I don't have a lot of time to hunt myself. So, and I still like stacking them on my wall. So, but there are those guys who've got plenty of those already, and they're going to be able to see that and automatically disqualify it, like I would see a 120-inch deer and be like, nah, I'll wait. Other than that, they get the deer over that 150 mark, and I think pretty much everybody's shooting. And I try to filter those guys out that are going to pass the 150s anyway, because if you've got a bunch of 150s, I'm just not the outfitter for you, even though we get bigger deer here.
No, it's anybody that claims that anyways, that's, and I know from being in the business, so to speak, it's false truth anyway. So I think you're in a unique situation because, man, you just have deer numbers. Tim really, over the years we've talked and you've always sent me photos, you have deer numbers. And I think, if me personally, I would rather always go hunt a spot that the potential is there to shoot a 115 up, but I also get to see a crap ton of 120s, 130s. No shame in that. I love that activity, and it makes you a better hunter when you get to just be around deer.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, our Nebraska place has got the numbers like that where they're just insane. I had one guy the other day put on his Instagram, you saw, and I hesitate to say, but these aren't my words. And I believe him because I've seen it up there. After they harvest corn, the deer numbers are insane. He said he saw 89 deer in a day, 89. And I know there's guys that are listening that see more than that in a day, and they're like, whatever. But for most of us, 89 deer in a week, fantastic, To see 89 deer in a day, I'm sure some of them were probably the same, right? They weren't wearing jerseys, but still, that's a lot of activity, And one thing I want to touch on that is, we've got people that come out here for guided hunts and people that come out for semi-guided. And out here, if you're seeing a lot of deer in the 120, 130 range, I usually think that's probably, unless you're on a semi-guided hunt and you're happy in that range, that's a problem. If you're seeing no deer, you probably got a big one around there somewhere because these woodlots are small and those big bucks, they own them. And if you start seeing a lot of little bucks in an area you're hunting a big one, probably your big one's gone. But that's a regional thing. I don't think that's anything that would translate to Ohio or Michigan or anywhere that has big woods, but it sure does here. And it's hard to keep people in the game when they're not seeing a lot of deer. But it's like, this is par for the course, man. This is maybe a half an acre of woods we're hunting in the middle of a cornfield. You don't want to see those 10 120s unless you're out semi-guided. Then that stage is all right. But if you're hunting Mr. 160, you better not be seeing very many at all.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I believe that to be true. And I believe the opposite is true, too. You can be in an area where you see, you know that it's kind of getting going and there's a hot doe in the area that, Mr. Big may be there, but sometimes there's 3 or 4 other Mr. Bigs in that area. And now I can't say I've seen that a lot, but I've seen that to the point where, I would count one 24-hour span, Tim, where I saw 4 bucks over 150.
That's incredible, yeah.
So I think that does happen too, and a lot of guys just overlook it. But what you said is really true, because I only had seen like maybe two or three immature bucks in that 24 hours and 2 daylight sets, daylight to dark. That's what I mean by 24 hours. But so that kind of holds true too, that a lot of big deer will move in an area and push out some smaller ones, and there may be a smaller one that just hasn't got his butt kicked yet and is going to hang out there. But it was probably one of the best, 2 days of my hunting life, with or without killing something, just to see, a 150 to a 180. It was, pretty unique.
Yeah, no, that's true, and we do encounter that out here too. I know you probably remember that huge drop time buck we killed 2 years ago. We named Dirk Diggler.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That other 163 buck that we took out of there. By the way, that guy ended up shooting another giant this year on his first sit. But that's beside the point I'm trying to make. But they were in a little tiny draw, and those deer ran together for the whole year before. I didn't mess with them because we didn't have to, and they were both nice. They weren't that nice, Then obviously the next year they grew into something special, and I thought, sure, these things are going to push each other out, but they coexisted, man. I got pictures of them in the rut, standing on the same picture frame, And
wow.
you'd never think
That's
these
cool.
deer get along, but they might have been, who knows? Maybe they were brothers. Maybe they grew up together. Maybe they just had an agreement, gentleman's agreement. Yep. You stay up here, I'll stay down here, and they won't mess with each other in the dark. Who knows, how these animals coexist? But sometimes you do get into a nest of them, and man, that's a beautiful place to be if you have the luxury of seeing it.
Yeah, for sure. I know, like I said, obviously that might be on the rare side, but just a unique dynamic once again in the rut. That's weird stuff happens.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And we'll take it every time it does.
Yeah, for sure. But I know you got what would be this weekend opening of gun coming up, is that right? Actually, probably Friday, right?
Yeah, well, we open Saturday. We're going to be heading up there in 48 hours to start showing guys where to go sit. And, man, we got some nice deer this year up there. A little nicer than normal. So I'm expecting to see a pretty good bloodbath. I hate to sound like a sicko, but I mean, I'm an outfitter. That's what I do for a living. I want to see some deer get dropped, and rifle season's always satisfying because a lot of times they don't get wounded. When they get hit, they're done. And blood trails are short and smiles are wide, and that's what really, after lockdown, I'm in the mood for that. I want to see some instant gratification and see some deer piling up because, you know, during bow season, you earn almost every single deer you got. There's a buck running across the road right in front of us right now. Sorry, I'm easily distracted, but we're going to pick up a hunter right now, and there's deer out moving. It's 9:50 in the morning, and they're out like it's daylight, or out like it's dawn, you know. That's why we're here this time of year, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, unfortunately, Tim, I got an appointment at 11, so I got about 10 minutes left. But, you know, it's always cool and great to talk with you. And always, how many guys do you have left right now in Kansas before you got to head up to Nebraska?
Right now, I think we're sitting about 15 people between the 4 counties that we're in. Maybe just a hair more than that. I'm not sure exactly because we had a 4-tag out last night, and I haven't really looked. I know that one person's here kind of staying a little bit late on one of their hunts. So we're getting kind of winding down a little bit. But we've actually had the luxury of hiring Mike full-time now, so he's running his own camp. And then we have Cass helping, and I've got Kate here helping too. And it's bigger now than it ever has been. And every year we try to grow a little bit. Every year it gets a little scarier, man. But, now I'm able to go to Nebraska without putting things in the bind here, so to speak. So we got other camps coming in yet, and we still got a lot of big deer that haven't been shot that, inventory is good, and we've got the habitat, thank God for that, because I think that makes me better than I am. So we'll see how it ends. Yeah. It definitely is a handicap. I'm not going to deny it. I'm not going to sit here and act like Billy Badass. And a lot of it has to do with things that are completely out of my control. I'm blessed with good land, and I got good hunters and good support, man, all the way around, from landowners all the way down to sponsors, down to you and people helping get the name out there. I can't thank you enough. It's an honor to be on your show.
No, thanks, man. I'm always excited to talk to you, and I know you're bound to shoot one of your hunters are bound to shoot a really big one yet this year, and hopefully next week everything calms down and you get another 30-minute break. We'll catch back up and see how the rest of this week and opening a gun have gone for you.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's plan on a week out, and we'll touch base on Nebraska rifle and how things are looking, because I think things are actually running a little bit late here in Kansas. The best is yet to come, I hope. I don't want to say that's the case, but it sure looks like it, man. As long as we got the people in the air, these deer are getting pretty active out here.
Yeah, for sure, and that's always exciting. I mean, it's the best time of the year for your deer hunter, so love to talk about it. So we'll do that. We'll catch up next week, and thanks for making time for us today, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure's all mine.
Absolutely. And guys, as you know, every week, iTunes, the Unfiltered Outdoor app, Outdoor Podcast channel. If you get a chance on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week.